The fluorescent lights of the Sterling agency hummed a familiar Friday evening dirge. I, Ava, a senior account executive for over a decade, was in my office, trying to clear the last few items from my seemingly endless to-do list before the weekend officially began. My fingers danced across the keyboard, a rhythm honed by years of dedication, of late nights and early mornings, of pouring every ounce of my MBA-sharpened intellect into this company. The intercom on my desk phone crackled to life, startling me. Ava, Ethan needs to see you in his office. His assistant's voice was crisp, devoid of any warmth, much like her boss. Ethan, the new CEO, Mr. Barnes's son, barely 32 and already radiating an aura of unearned authority. A knot of unease tightened in my stomach, a premonition I couldn't quite name but felt deep in my bones. On my way, I replied, keeping my voice even, betraying none of the sudden apprehension that had gripped me. I saved my work, logged off my computer, and smoothed down my skirt, a purely habitual gesture of composure. 10 years. More than a decade I dedicated to Sterling Agency, building client relationships from the ground up, mentoring new talent, and consistently exceeding targets. My track record spoke for itself, or so I had always believed. I walked down the plushly carpeted hallway, the expensive, abstract art Ethan had recently installed on the walls feeling cold and alien. His father, Mr. Barnes, had built this agency on a foundation of grit, mutual respect, and a genuine appreciation for talent. Ethan seemed to be redecorating that legacy with a veneer of detached, Silicon Valley chic. His office door was slightly ajar. I knocked lightly before pushing it open. The room was a monument to his perceived status, a vast expanse dominated by a sleek, minimalist desk, oversized modern art pieces that probably cost more than my annual salary, and a panoramic view of the city I rarely had time to appreciate. Ethan was perched on the edge of his ridiculously expensive ergonomic chair, scrolling through something on his tablet, a bored expression plastered on his face. He didn't look up immediately, letting the silence stretch, a petty power play I'd already witnessed him use on others. Finally, he glanced up, his eyes cool and appraising, like I was a piece of outdated software he was about to uninstall. Ava, come in. Close the door. His tone was casual, almost dismissive. I did as he asked, the click of the latch sounding unnaturally loud in the sudden quiet. He gestured vaguely towards one of the uncomfortable-looking designer chairs opposite his desk, but he didn't invite me to sit. He remained standing, a subtle assertion of dominance. So, he began, tapping his stylus against the tablet, we're making some changes around here. Shaking things up, you know? I kept my expression neutral, waiting. My heart had begun a slow, heavy thrum against my ribs. And as part of that, he continued, his voice devoid of any discernible emotion, we've decided that your particular skill set isn't quite aligned with the new direction we're taking. I felt a chill creep up my spine despite the professionally maintained temperature of the room. I'm not sure I understand, Ethan. Your methods, Ava, they're a bit old school. He finally met my gaze, a condescending smirk playing on his lips. We need fresh blood, innovative thinkers. People who aren't afraid to break the mold. The air in the room seemed to thin, making it difficult to draw a proper breath. Are you saying my performance has been unsatisfactory? I asked, my voice remarkably steady. A testament to years of high-stakes client negotiations. I believe my contributions to the Sterling Agency, particularly on major accounts like the upcoming Khalif Global Retail deal, have been significant. He waved a dismissive hand, as if swatting away an annoying fly. Look, this isn't a debate, Ava. It's a decision. Your employment with Sterling Agency is terminated, effective immediately. The words, so blunt, so cold, hung in the air between us. Terminated. After 10 years of loyalty, of exceeding expectations, of making this agency my life. A wave of disbelief washed over me, so potent it almost buckled my knees. I could feel the blood draining from my face. Excuse me. I managed, the words barely a whisper. Did you not hear me? Ethan's voice sharpened with impatience, the polite facade cracking. You're fired, Ava. Your approach is too traditional. We're looking for a more dynamic, a more disruptive force. Frankly, your way of doing things is just too old for where this company is headed. My mind reeled, struggling to process the sheer audacity, the callousness of his pronouncement. Fired. For being too old in my methods at 38? For being a traditional after successfully landing and managing some of the agency's most lucrative accounts? I see, I said, the calmness in my voice a stark contrast to the maelstrom of anger and betrayal churning within me. Could you provide specific examples or performance data that led to this decision? I needed to understand, to see the logic, if any, behind this corporate execution. Ethan actually scoffed, a small, unpleasant sound. This isn't a performance review, Ava. It's a directive. My father may have appreciated your due diligence, but I have a different vision. A vision that doesn't include you, apparently, I stated, a sliver of ice in my tone. He shrugged, a gesture of supreme indifference, already turning his attention back to his sleek, impersonal gadgets. You can collect your personal belongings. HR will contact you regarding the formalities. His eyes, cold and unfeeling, flicked towards the door. Dismissed. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. 1,000 furious retorts, a decade's worth of achievements, screamed for release. I wanted to shout, to rail against the injustice, to demand he look me in the eye and acknowledge the years I had poured into this place. But then, a different, colder resolve settled over me. I straightened my shoulders, lifting my chin a fraction higher. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. A slow, deliberate, and utterly insincere smile touched my lips. Understood, Ethan. My voice was crisp, professional, betraying nothing of the turmoil inside. Thank you for your time. I turned and walked out of his ridiculously opulent office, my head held high, each step measured and controlled. The corridor outside seemed to stretch endlessly. My team, the people I'd mentored and championed, looked up as I approached my own office, their faces etched with a mixture of curiosity and concern. A few made to rise, their unspoken questions hanging in the air. I gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of my head, a silent plea. Don't make this harder than it already is. They understood, their expressions shifting to a somber sympathy. Back in the familiar confines of my office, the carefully constructed dam of my composure began to crack. I sank into my chair, the leather groaning softly beneath me, and stared blankly at the meticulously organized files on my desk. Each one a testament to countless hours of work. My work. Work that was, apparently, no longer valued. The silence of the room was deafening, broken only by the frantic thumping of my own heart. Then, with a deep, shuddering breath, I began to pack. Each item I placed into the cardboard box felt like a tiny piece of my professional life being discarded. The framed photo of my parents, a reminder of who I was doing this for. The small succulent Olivia had given me, a symbol of our enduring friendship. The industry awards gathering dust on the shelf, now just hollow trinkets. Driving home through the Friday afternoon traffic of downtown Chicago, my mind was a whirlwind of disbelief and a raw, burgeoning anger. 10 years of my life, dedication, late nights that bled into early mornings, working through holidays, juggling impossible deadlines. Navigating treacherous office politics, even taking hushed, tearful calls after my mother's passing while still trying to close a deal. I had given Sterling Agency everything. And for what? To be dismissed with a casual, "Your methods are too old?" by a man-child who'd inherited his position, not earned it. The injustice of it all burned like acid in my chest. But beneath the anger, a cold, sharp curiosity began to stir. Why? Why now? His explanation felt flimsy, a poorly constructed excuse. There had to be more to it. That question, why, echoed in my mind throughout the long, sleepless night, a persistent, tormenting refrain. There was something about Ethan's smug confidence, the almost careless way he delivered the news, that felt off. And the timing was undeniably strange. We were on the cusp of finalizing the Khalif Global Retail deal, one of the largest, most complex accounts Sterling had ever pursued. I'd personally spearheaded that pitch for 6 grueling months, cultivating a strong rapport with Mr. Hassan, their CEO. Even learning basic Arabic phrases to show respect for his culture. The final presentation, the one that would seal the deal, was scheduled for next week. And I was the project lead. I knew every nuance of that contract, every potential pitfall, every opportunity. Had Ethan even bothered to read the key client exclusivity clause I'd insisted Mr. Barnes include after that disastrous acquisition attempt a few years back? The clause that stipulated I, Ava Harris, was the sole authorized negotiator for this specific client. A shiver of something unreadable traced its way down my spine. The following morning, a gray, listless Saturday, I was in my home office, a sun-drenched room in my quiet suburban townhouse. Staring at my LinkedIn profile, the cursor blinking mockingly on the screen. My MBA hung on the wall, a silent testament to my qualifications. Bookshelves overflowed with tomes on strategy, marketing, and leadership. This was my sanctuary, the place I came to think, to plan, to build. Now, it felt like a war room where I was planning my own desperate counteroffensive in the job market. Just as I was about to click on a promising job listing, my personal cell phone, the one reserved for close friends and family, buzzed on the polished surface of my desk. An unfamiliar number. My stomach clenched. I almost let it go to voicemail, the thought of another confrontation, another blow to my already bruised ego, almost unbearable. But that persistent curiosity, the one that had kept me up all night, won out. I took a fortifying breath and answered. Ava Harris. Ava, it's Mr. Barnes. The voice, gravelly and familiar, sent an unexpected jolt through me. Mr. Barnes. The founder. The man who had hired me, mentored me, the man whose belief in my abilities had been a cornerstone of my career at Sterling. The man whose son had just unceremoniously kicked me to the curb. Mr. Barnes, I said, my voice a little shaky despite myself. It's a surprise to hear from you. Ava, I just heard what happened, he said, and I could hear the strain in his voice, a mixture of anger and something akin to embarrassment. I'm at a cafe near your place, the Daily Grind. Can you meet me? It's urgent. My mind raced. What could be so urgent? Yes, of course, Mr. Barnes. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The Daily Grind was a cozy, unassuming place, a world away from the sterile opulence of Sterling's headquarters. Mr. Barnes was already there, seated at a small table by the window, a half-empty cup of coffee in front of him. He looked older than I remembered, a weariness etched around his eyes that hadn't been there before he'd handed the reins to Ethan. He stood as I approached, a gesture of old-fashioned courtesy that Ethan would never have bothered with. Ava, thank you for coming, he said, his expression grave. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. I've just come from the office. Ethan told me about yesterday. He paused, and the look he gave me was one of profound apology. My son, he can be impetuous. He doesn't always see the bigger picture. An understatement if I'd ever heard one. He fired me, Mr. Barnes, I stated quietly, letting the bald fact hang in the air. He said my methods were outdated. Mr. Barnes ran a hand over his face, his brow furrowed in frustration. Ava, did he happen to consult the Khalif Global Retail contract before he spoke to you? A flicker of understanding, a tiny spark of hope, ignited within me. I doubt it, I replied. Why do you ask? He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Because, Ava, that contract contains the key client exclusivity clause. The one I insisted we include after the Steel Ridge debacle, remember? How could I forget? I had been the one to clean up that mess. It specifically names you, Ava Harris, as the sole project lead and authorized negotiator for Sterling Agency in all dealings with Khalif Global Retail. He let that sink in, his gaze intense. Ethan can't finalize that deal without you, Ava. Legally, ethically, practically, he's shot himself in the foot. Mr. Hassan will walk if you're not at that presentation next week. A slow, cold wave of realization washed over me, extinguishing the last embers of my despair and replacing it with something else entirely. Control. Ethan, in his arrogant haste, hadn't just fired his most experienced senior account executive. He torpedoed his own company's biggest upcoming deal. The fool. Mr. Barnes sighed, a deep, troubled sound. My son's impetuousness, his pride, it's going to be the ruin of him, and possibly this company, if I don't intervene. He looked directly at me then, a plea in his eyes. I need you, Ava. Sterling needs you. Before I could formulate a response, my phone, still clutched in my hand, buzzed with an incoming SMS. I glanced down. Ethan. Ava, I think we need to talk. Perhaps I was a little hasty yesterday. Let's connect on Monday to discuss. My apologies for any misunderstanding. The message reeked of panic, a stark contrast to his dismissive arrogance less than 24 hours ago. A bitter smile touched my lips. Misunderstanding. Oh, there was no misunderstanding, Ethan. You just made a very, very big mistake. And you're only just beginning to realize how big. I looked up at Mr. Barnes, the cogs in my mind already turning, formulating a strategy. The game, it seemed, was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning.